What is going on, guys? Nathan here with a Hearthstone gameplay commentary. Believe it or not, this is the first ever Hearthstone video that has ever been uploaded to my channel, and I am actually quite surprised myself that I would upload something like this because I have never really taken an interest in Hearthstone besides the last couple of weeks or so. And as you guys have seen on my channel, I've been into tabletop card games recently. It's kind of replaced my time devoted to League of Legends, and so I've been super huge into Magic the Gathering, which you guys have probably seen through my uploaded videos and stuff, where I would talk about my Magic decks, and basically I have kind of gotten the urge to play some sort of like online form of a tabletop card game, and the main program that players use for Magic the Gathering is Magic the Gathering Online, and that program is an absolute piece of trash, and I am not alone in that opinion. It is probably the worst developed game, so to speak, that I've ever seen, and frankly, the $10 that I've spent on it, I wish I could be refunded because it is such a terrible program. The UI is absolute garbage, and I figured out too that in order to get my current collections that I have, my physical collections, that I would need to buy them all over again on that program, and I decided that the investment for that would not be worth it whatsoever, and I immediately closed out of that program and haven't opened it since. So I turned instead to an online tabletop card game, and obviously the most popular one and the best looking, admittedly, is Hearthstone. So I tried that, and I didn't really like it at first. I just thought it was overall just a simplified version of Magic. So I wasn't really a fan, kind of left it, and a couple of my friends started really getting into Hearthstone, so I figured, hey, might as well try it again, and it's grown a little bit on me. But I wanted to talk about both games, kind of compare them both, and this is from the perspective of a sort of newbie at Hearthstone and somewhat of a newbie at Magic. I have like 3 to 4 commander decks, including or not including proxy decks, 4 commander decks, and I think like 3 modern decks of Magic. So got a decent amount of experience in Magic, at least with deck building, and with Hearthstone, I'm pretty much a noob. My highest level class is a level 16 Hunter now, I believe, which is what I'm playing in this video, and I wanted to just talk about both, and I figured maybe I would have somewhat of a unique perspective because obviously Magic has been out for like 20 years, and Hearthstone has been out for a couple of years, and I mean, I would think that people are used to Hearthstone a lot. They're very knowledgeable about it, so kind of hearing from somebody who is new to the scene, it might be a sort of refreshing point of view. I don't know. But anyway, I wanted to talk about both of the games and what I think of both of them in comparison to each other. What I think is that Magic has some obvious positives over Hearthstone because it has simply been around longer. That leads to more variety in cards, so like the cards in Magic can actually do more things, and it has more deeper mechanics, which Hearthstone will probably develop given more time, as long as the game stays alive, which it probably will, and it just better card variety. There are just more cards out there. So the thing is, I definitely like Magic's mechanics better because in Magic you have much more interaction with your opponent, and what I mean by that is that you can actually play spells on your opponent's turn, and you can physically do more things to your opponent. So you can, for example, you can apply poison counters. You can make your opponent discard a card. You can counter their spells. You can do all sorts of things that in Hearthstone it seems more focused on building up your board faster than your opponent can build up theirs. And once again, this is from the perspective of a noob, so I have limited to no like even viewing like a higher level competitive Hearthstone match. So if you guys like just strongly disagree with something, then feel free to leave a comment, and I'll check it out and be corrected. But Hearthstone just seems a little bit simpler that way. You build up your board faster than your opponent can build theirs, and the majority of my experience with Hearthstone has been with Hunter, and I think that's kind of a side effect of playing a lot of Hunter, is that Hunter, that's kind of what Hunter does. It's aggro combined with board control to lead to you kind of just running over your opponent. So, I also like in Magic how mana isn't guaranteed, and that could be taken as a positive or negative, but I think it's more entertaining, more unpredictable in Magic, your mana system, because if you don't hit your land draws, then you're going to have to be forced into a much different playstyle. Whereas in Hearthstone, you're guaranteed a mana crystal every single turn, and while that's probably more fair in all honesty, it leads to kind of the same thing over and over again. You try to build a deck based on your basic mana curve, and you know that if you have a 3 cost in your hand, that on turn 3 you can use that, whereas with Magic that's not entirely guaranteed. So heading into a game of Magic, I don't necessarily know whether I'm going to hit a lot of land. The luck of the draw seems to be more prominent in Magic just because your mana is also reliant upon luck of the draw. So that could be, once again, positive or negative. Some people like a steadier supply of mana. In Magic, I'm a huge green player, so green has a lot of land ramp, and like mana is something that I love to have, so I always make sure that I'm never mana screwed in a game of Magic the Gathering. So I've never really had as many problems, theoretically, for my matches played as other people might, just because I tend to play a lot of green. So I like how your mana isn't necessarily guaranteed, because that means that in most cases I will not be mana screwed because I tend to play a class, or rather a color, that takes care of that, versus my opponent who might be, because he doesn't have that ability. So I also like in Magic how the combat system is set up, and the combat system in Magic gives the advantage to the defender, and in doing so, I think it sets up a more in-depth combat system, just kind of how the system works. Because in Magic, if I have 3 creatures on the board, instead of saying I will attack your creature with my creature and it will do damage and kill it, you instead declare your attackers, and then your opponent chooses how to defend those creatures. Now, in doing so, your opponent can choose how they take damage to the best of, to their advantage. So that means that typically I would say that, once again, it leads to a little bit more, not unpredictability, that's not the really right word I'm looking for, but perhaps Magic games, well, they typically do go longer because your opponent is going to distribute damage to the best of their ability, where they won't take damage as fast, which leads to longer matches. But you have things like, for example, if the sort of defending combat system in Magic leads to things like Titanic Growth, for example. That's a green thing, but it's just my example for how you can mess with the combat. So if I were to attack with those same 3 creatures and my opponent decides to defend, but he can cast something that will all of a sudden buff his creature, which in Hearthstone, similar things exist, like secrets and whatnot, but they're not, I feel, as prominent as cards in Magic that allow you to do sort of the same thing. So if I wanted to attack with those 3 creatures and my opponent, Titanic Growth is basically the equivalent of buffing up a creature, so that is all of a sudden more scary than you thought. That's sort of a way that a defending player can use the system to their advantage, because they will be able to save whatever creature that they might have lost anyway, and be the better off for it. So I like that. It leads to more interesting plays than Hearthstone, in my opinion, and it's it makes it much more entertaining to watch, I think, because there is that one extra level of I don't know if unpredictability is still the word here. It's just a little bit more not as structured, if that makes sense. So I think that's a lot better. Makes Magic better. What I will say is that Hearthstone has better beginning match mechanics. So in Hearthstone, you have a guaranteed sort of good opening hand, which I noticed immediately when I started. I thought that was actually odd coming from Magic because in Hearthstone you can basically trade the cards in your opening hand back to your deck for free. Whereas in Magic, you can do basically the same thing, but you start off with one less card. So if I have my 7 cards in my opening hand and I have no land, well, I have to send those cards back, and now I draw 6 cards, so I am at a 1-card disadvantage, which can definitely lead to another level of luck of the draw, a little bit more chaos, a little bit more unpredictability, but it's, like, again, it's... In Magic, it feels like you're not really going into a match knowing exactly what will happen. In Hearthstone, it feels like you're kind of repeating the same thing over and over. You're gonna have your low cost creatures, you're gonna cast them. You're gonna have your medium cost, you're gonna cast them. In Magic, you never really know what exactly you're gonna get. Basically in your opening hand at least. So Hearthstone makes things a little bit more fair that way, but it doesn't make it as entertaining, I feel like. And again, with the crystal system, you are guaranteed crystals so that you lead to a little bit more even, much more even, like ability to cast cards because you pretty much know that on your opponent's 8th turn, they're going to have 8 mana, so therefore they know, like, they can cast a huge spell. And again, I don't like that because there are mana accelerating cards in Hearthstone, but I feel like there aren't as many as in Magic because I like the playstyle in Magic where you accelerate your mana and you cast big cards. I'm kind of like a late game specialist in that way, and I feel like when I switched to Hearthstone, that playstyle, which I'm so used to, has all of a sudden been yanked away from me, and I'm left with something that's much more structured, much more, fair, and I feel like I just don't like it as much. So I'll give Hearthstone that. It's definitely a little bit more fair that way, a little bit more structured. And again, Magic does have the advantage here because it's been around for 20 years at this point. It's just you just have so much depth to it just because of the time that the developers have had to develop cards that are balanced and that can combo with other cards and stuff like that. But overall, my favored game is still Magic, and I would say that if obviously there are, I think, the Steam Magic online games, but if Magic the Gathering were to come out with basically a Magic the a MTGO, Magic the Gathering Online 2.0, so to speak, then I would definitely switch to that as soon as possible just because I like the game so much better. Because right now Magic the Gathering Online is an absolute trash piece of program, and frankly it needs to be completely revamped from the ground up. But overall I would say that Hearthstone, because of how it's set up and because of its somewhat limited number of cards in comparison to Magic, it's just easier to get into, to pick up and play, which actually kind of synergizes well with the fact that it's free to play. That means that anybody can basically just pick it up and start playing. And it's easier to get into because of the starting card set. So basically, one good thing about Hearthstone 2 is that you immediately download the game, you enter the game, and all of a sudden you have a decent starting set of cards. Now, obviously, those cards are all common and not worth very much, but in Magic, if you want to even get into the game, you have to start off by actually buying cards, and you can buy something like an intro pack. which will cost you like 30 something dollars, which will start you off. But that is worth mentioning too, because Hearthstone is just that much easier to pick up and play because you spend $0 and all of a sudden you have cards and you're ready to go. Magic doesn't necessarily have that. And for both games, really, if you want the better cards, the rares and stuff, you're going to have to spend a decent amount of money. Both are money pits at this point. I think that's pretty obvious. In Hearthstone, though, you don't like, just because there aren't as many cards, you don't have to spend as much for the cards that you want. But I mean, you could probably drop like $300 to $500 and get most of the cards in Hearthstone. But that isn't nearly as true for Magic, not only because some cards are much more rare and more valuable than others, but just because there are more cards out there to actually physically purchase. But overall, Hearthstone, I mean, both are awesome games, but I would say just because, I mean, from my experience with Magic, I would say that it's better because it's much more entertaining. You never really know what you're getting into when you start a brand new match. And that's half of the fun of it. And I feel like I'm sort of a deck building type of person. I love taking an idea and molding cards around that idea to form something that I can then use in the way that I anticipated. So I feel like deck building has the advantage in Magic because there's a much greater variety of cards, so you can really hone in on a specific aspect that you want in your deck. So if I wanted like Token Swarm in Magic, there are cards that can do, like, if I wanted to buff up my tokens, there are cards for that. If I wanted to, I don't know, what else would you do to tokens? This isn't a very good example, but if I wanted to buff up tokens, if I wanted to have a creature that synergizes with the number of tokens I have on the field or whatever, or something like that, then I can do that. Like, I can make really out of the blue type of decks, and I can totally just do that, which is awesome. But again, that's the advantage of Magic being around longer. So, given, I mean, if we really step back into the time when Magic was only, well, even if we just took, let's say we compared the two with Hearthstone, being Hearthstone compared to Magic in the last 2 years, just to eliminate the whole time factor, they'd probably be about even games. I do, though, like Magic's mechanics better, because they're not as structured. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about that, maybe get a discussion going. So if you guys agree or disagree, feel free to let me know. And I will reply to some of the comments if I see that they're particularly interesting. And yeah, so I think here is where I'll wrap up the video, guys. I apologize if I made really dumb mistakes in the gameplay on the screen, because again, I am a noob at this game. So yeah, and I think I'll wrap up the video here. So thank you all for watching. Feel free to leave a rating on the video if you did enjoy it. Feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.